So welcome, Olgeta, and thanks everyone for joining us today for the official launch and introduction to student reporters. This is the second collaborative project to be launched as part of the 2022 in partnership with the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, also known as AFTRS. For those that perhaps haven't already met me, and most of you have by now, I'm Sophie Howlett. I'm based at the University of Melbourne and work as part of the project team that design, deliver and support learning activities for the PNG Oz Partnership Secondary Schools Initiative. Before going further, I'd like to acknowledge all the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we work, live and learn, both in Australia and Papua New Guinea, on the coast and in the highlands, on the main and outer islands, up north and down south, east and west. I particularly acknowledge the Bunurong people, the traditional custodians of the land on which I live and meet with you today, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. I'd also like to pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. Today, my colleague Nicole, another member of the past team, is with us, along with Medi, Junior and Aaron from the Australia Awards team based up in Port Moresby. We're also thrilled to be joined by special guests from AFTRS, Fiona Smith, Head of Radio and Podcasting, and Sue Elphinston, Project Manager with the First Nations and Outreach team. And of course, there's all of you, the past participants, both students and educators from across Papua New Guinea and Australia joining us. Thank you for continuing to participate in the many and varied activities being offered as part of this phase 2 of PASS. It's been a little while since we've gathered online, so I'd quickly like to just run through our Google Meet etiquette, just a quick reminder that we're really keen for you, the participants, to let us know who's here via the chat. So we encourage you, ask you to write in your name, your school and the details of any of other people with you via the chat so we know who has attended today. We ask you to keep your microphone on mute unless you're speaking to the group, and feel free to ask questions as we go, either via the chat or perhaps using the raised hand icon on the bottom of the screen there. And don't forget to have some fun with it. I'd also like to highlight that this session is being recorded for future reference and will be made available via the PASS site within coming days. So today we're here to focus on being reporters, the fundamentals of the role of the reporter, and more so on being good reporters. As I mentioned earlier, this activity has been developed by AFTRS and comes out of the AFTRS Media Lab storytelling curriculum activity and the Talk Story Belong You Me project offered last year. It's also a great next step building on the Photo Friendship Video Diaries project many participants worked on last term. It's an opportunity for you to focus on all the various considerations when preparing an audio report, with lots of tips on creating quality audio pieces. It's also another fantastic opportunity to build links and understanding between PNG and Australia, with increasing media, whilst increasing media and digital literacy. So I'm now going to hand over to Fiona Smith, who's going to lead us through student reporters this afternoon. Thanks, Fiona.
Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you all for having me in your classrooms and your homes this afternoon.
Sorry, Fiona, you just dropped back on mute.
Sorry about that. It seemed to automatically mute me. Apologies. I would like to acknowledge the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today, and also pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge First Nations people everywhere and their contribution and continuing culture globally. Hello from Sydney, Australia. I am Fiona Smith. As Sophie mentioned, I'm the head of radio and podcasting at AFTRS, which is the Australian Film, Television and Radio School. I'm a creative education and leadership executive with a background in radio and podcasting, and my work at the moment involves developing, co-creating a diverse range of national and international programs, workshops and training solutions. And my work focuses on best industry practices and working very closely with the radio and podcast industry to identify and prepare for the emerging opportunities that are coming over the next 5 years. Before I joined AFTRS, I was a music presenter and programmer for 34 radio stations, which was the Triple M regional network. So I tend to do a lot of thinking in audio, and I also keep up to date with the trends and current practices globally through my industry work in being a judge often for events like the New York Festival World Radio Awards. I was a grand jury member for them, the Australian Podcast Awards and the Commercial Radio Awards, and also the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union as well. Some of the areas that I'm interested in are documentary podcasts and audio fiction, and also workplace culture and leadership in general. When I first started in industry, live reporting was one of the very, very first things that I learned how to do. And today we're going to look at that role of the reporter so that you can create some content that you would like to make. So why are we here this afternoon? Well, the aim of today's session is to give us a bit of insight into the fundamentals of the role of the reporter, and also how to create a very short audio report that's inspired by local events happening around you, or perhaps news stories or any kind of item of interest, something that you're interested in. You'll also explore some techniques for researching and preparing to make a report, and also how to present one and record and edit a radio or podcast report on a variety of topics. So I hope you have your mobile phone handy if you've got a smartphone. We're going to be using that today during this workshop. So if you do have a phone, I know that sometimes in classes, teachers often ask you to put them away. I would love it if you are able to have your phone just for this afternoon. Please, 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 teachers, say yes, because we would love for the students to use their phones if possible for this activity this afternoon. We'll also learn how to identify an audience and think about some of the emerging opportunities in your community as well. So the purpose of today's session is also to introduce you to the fantastic worksheet that hopefully you've seen in your classroom, and also the great task that you're going to be working on. So over the next 20 days, each day you will create a little 1-minute recording challenge where you'll be practicing recording your own voice, possibly your friends and family too, and introducing some topics that you're interested in. Could also be some sounds in your community or that you come across on the way to school as well. The best part about audio is it's so portable, and it means that the possibilities are infinite. So it's when you start training yourself to think in audio, you'll start to notice the world around you and the sounds around you at a different level than you previously have. And it will also give you some good laughs interviewing your family and friends and asking them questions on topics that they're interested in as well. So ultimately, you're going to be learning techniques that are going to help you with this 1-minute challenge you'll be doing each day. And at the end of the 20 days, you will create a little 1 or up to 3-minute segment that is either for a radio program or a podcast on a topic of your choice. So let's get started, hey? Now, I wanted to ask you, who uses their mobile phone to not only send text messages, but to record messages to your friends? So is anybody using voice memo already? So what I would love you to do is in your phone, yep, there's mine opening up, is to find your little voice memo app. It's usually called Voice Recorder or Voice Memo. Most phones have them, and it will ask you to possibly allow permissions to be accessed on your device, which is what I'm doing now. And then it should look a little bit like, there'll be, I don't know if you can see that, but there'll usually be a red button. And then what I would like you to do is to record just 3 things about yourself, introducing yourself. So if it was me, I'd be saying, "Hi there, my name's Fiona Smith. I used to host a rock show and I have a dog called Zeppelin and my favorite fruit is mango." And then stop. Okay, so that is good. Now you can see with the phone that my recording, hopefully you can see that, my recording looks like a bit of a wave file. That's called a sound wave. And that helps us when we're editing, which we're going to do a little bit later on. Hopefully that was a bit of fun. And now let me just get back to what is an actual reporter. So some of you will have seen reporters maybe on the TV or heard them on a radio show. A reporter is basically reporting with a storytelling purpose. It's a person who identifies, gathers, and also assembles current and relevant news and information and compiles this into reports to share with the world, basically, or a specific audience on a radio program. And now a reporter also spends time researching and also interviewing people and writing and recording scripts and also editing these together to form a cohesive story. Reporters are also generally multi-skilled, particularly with digital content, and they might have also the ability to take really good photographs, shoot video, write articles for websites, and also for social media posts. So if you're wondering what exactly is a report is created to inform an audience about something that's happening in the world around them. Usually it can be something that goes for either 30 seconds or it can go up to a few minutes in length. And it's where the reporter will be interviewing or introducing a topic. There could also be some sound effects and it will be edited together to tell a little story as well. That's usually published either being broadcast live to air on a radio program or being uploaded to a website that plays audio content like Spotify, for example. So why do we actually need reporters? In the chat, can you think of a reason why we actually need reporters? Why do reporters matter? Have a little think. And if you've got any ideas, please share them in the chat. So one of the reasons that we need reporters is to respect the truth and empower audiences by keeping them informed of events and issues that's happening around them as well.
Fiona, can I just jump in for a second? We had a comment back from May, and May's answer was to inform, raise awareness, and challenge perspectives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great answer. Because one of the things why we need more great reporters in the world is so that we share different perspectives and we also have diversity of opinions and we're sharing what's happening in our little corners of the world with people who are not there as well. So it's really important we've got really good reporters. I'm going to play you an example now of a little report. This is a teenager from Australia, from Victoria, down at Wodonga on, I'm not sure if I'm saying them correctly, but Wiradjuri, Waveroo and Diora country. And it's a little example of a report about why reporting is important. Hopefully you can hear this.
This is an ABC podcast.
Haywire.
Young voices from regional Australia.
Friend. Wodonga, Victoria.
I can be shy, but I want to tell my story. Growing up in Kenya, I watched the same TV channel, KBC, every day. It was the only one we had. At 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. before and after school, I was mesmerized by KBC news anchor Kanze Dena. She was fearless in sharing other people's stories, but also her own. I was so inspired by how hard she worked to get into journalism. I found comfort in the fact that I will always be able to watch the news when I get home from school, no matter what happened that day.
That was a piece that's really sharing the importance of why we need good reporters, and also, I guess, the role model aspect as well, that it's really great when you've got someone that you can look up to and that you want to actually be, creating content like that as well. So we're going to have a little listen to a live cross example. So this piece is a community radio station in Sydney called 2SER. Recently covered the climate change protest that was happening in the city. And this is what's known as a live cross, when a reporter will be giving a first-hand account of what's happening, and it's usually broadcast live.
We have a very interesting segment for you this morning. We've got a live cross down to UTS, where the climate strike march, is gathering for this morning. I believe it's only just starting. So I'm being joined this morning by one of our newsroom team members, Melanie Scott, down at UTS. Good morning, Melanie.
Good morning, Maddie. Yes, indeed, we are at UTS at the moment, and it is kicking off just as we speak. We have a couple of the UTS students standing out the front now, just sort of congregating here. The University of Sydney students are going to be coming up the street in just a moment. They're all going to be marching up. In fact, I can see them now coming up Broadway here. And we've just got some speakers happening at the moment, and really just to create that energy and that vibe and get everybody involved, even off the street. It looks like lots of people are coming and talking to everybody here as well. Now, what's going to happen next is they're going to get on the train at just maybe close to 11 o'clock. They're going to catch the train to Kirribilli House, and this is where it's all going to basically to confront Scott Morrison. So he's going to have a lot of angry high school and university students at the front door this morning.
So that's an example of a live cross where a reporter is describing the events that are happening around them in real time, and that's usually broadcast live as well. I'd like you to now have a little think about what are some of the attributes and skills of a reporter. What do you think you'd need to know how to be able to do? Well, what skills do you think you'd need to know if you would want to be a reporter?
One of the responses there, Fiona, is asking good questions.
Excellent answer. Yes, definitely asking good questions is an essential skill. Some of the other skills that are useful when you are being a reporter are also having a really strong sense of integrity, because we do need accurate report telling, and also respect. It's often difficult to get people to want to speak with you if they don't feel comfortable with you, or you get off on the wrong foot when you first introduce yourself. So accuracy in reporting is really essential, as is clarity. How do we spot fake news? That is such a good question. And it's becoming increasingly difficult, but that is why, particularly in the digital age we're in now, it's so important to have an understanding of integrity and a strong sense of accuracy in reporting. so that we do dispel the fake news, and we can ensure that the media is being held account and also being accountable for the stories and the way that they are telling those stories with fairness, consideration to editorial judgment. You want to have good communication skills as a reporter. You often have to do investigating, and you definitely want to be having some digital savviness with your digital skills as well. So being able to use a smartphone, take a photo, write a story, all very, very important, as is sensitivity as well. There could often be cultural or other sense, or confronting content that you're covering that you need to consider how to tell that, but in a way that's sensitive or not distressing too much to the audience as well. So some of the reporting principles as well, ideally, if we could get everyone on board with this globally, we wouldn't have fake news, but the likelihood of that is slim. But it's up to all of us that have a strong sense of purpose with telling great stories accurately. There are some codes of ethics that you can follow. The guidelines that are utilised in PNG, I believe, are the Papua New Guinea Media Council Codes of Ethics, and in Australia, they're known as the MEAA. And there are also some great codes that are the Journalistic Code of Ethics, which I'll try and copy for you now, which they are kind of some good, well-rounded ones that I can show you in a sec. And
some more responses, Fee. We've got skillful in recording, speaking.
Definitely.
Phrasing the questions carefully, considering the ethical backgrounds.
Definitely, yes. Very smart answers, and you're spot on. So respecting the truth and the public's right to information are fundamental principles of journalism. And you can see this link, which should be in your resource as well, will cover some of those ethical and cultural considerations for accuracy. Okay, so I'd like for you to have a think about some of the topics that are important to you. What are some of the things that you're interested in, or maybe there's events coming up that you think could be worthy of a report? Just do a little bit of take a moment now to think about some topics or events that you're interested in. Now, these could come from everyday life, hanging out with your friends or your families. What do you like to get up to? Could be something happening in your community, or could be something happening at school. You might be interested in the environment or your faith and spirituality as well. What about health and well-being? Maybe you're a keen sports person as well, or very interested in music. Have a little think about maybe 2 or 3 topics that spark your interest. If nothing else fails, think about what do you use the internet for and look up most. Maybe that will help. And jot them down, because when you are thinking of ideas for starting your recording and reporting, they'll be helpful for you to have a think about as well. Now, when you're making reports, one of the things that really shapes the way that you tell your content is having a think about your audience. So your audience is a collection of people who are either watching, reading, or listening to your radio program or podcast. And the reason why it's really important to consider your audience is because it will help you structure your messaging and reporting of the event you're covering in a way that really connects with that audience. Now, those of you that are in the room that are, under 20 years old, I'm sure that the way that you speak to your friends is different to the way that your parents or family members may speak. You have different slang or different lingo that you use, different nicknames for each other. So when you understand how to craft a message for your audience, it's important to kind of understand the language that would be expected by the audience that will be listening. So when you're considering or writing a report, always think about who the audience is and what do they care about. Audience considerations, when you're thinking about it, a little exercise that you can do is to create a bit of a listener profile. And we use this all the time in radio and podcasting. It's when you think about who your audience is, and then you kind of create your ideal listener. So someone who's likely to have the personality traits and lifestyle habits of most of the listeners. And if you think about your audience, you can ask yourself some questions like, what's their age likely to be? Where are they likely to live? Or what language do they speak? What hobbies are they interested in? What do they care about? You know, do they care about the price of petrol, or do they care about the latest reality show, or are they interested in the environment? You know, understanding your audience at a deeper level. A little exercise in writing a mini listener profile can sometimes be really useful for when you're creating a report and thinking about your content, and then reading your listener profile, and you'll sometimes go, oh, I'm interested in that, but I'm not sure if my audience would be. And vice versa. There could be something that your audience is really interested in and you're not interested in at all. But as a reporter, you would still cover that event because it serves the purpose of serving the audience. Another skill that we use a lot in developing reports is research. So what is research and how do you actually do it? Because research is more than just asking questions. It's more than just putting in Google and finding the first couple of answers that pop up. It is defined as the creation of new knowledge and the use of existing knowledge in a new way to generate new understandings, and also being able to identify reliable and accurate information is a very valuable skill. It helps you with your critical thinking, and it helps you to continue to ask questions through life, to question and be curious about the world around you. You can often find sources for research across all media, in newspapers and magazines, in TV shows, radio, podcasts, libraries, including your ebooks. The internet researching is obviously the number one probably go-to search for all of us. I think we can often be, I'm sorry, my phone is making songs for me. It can often be where we go. We can tend to rely on our phones and the internet quite heavily, but also remember that the internet isn't the only place to source information. But there are some great ways that you can use Google a little bit differently to maybe how you have been before. And that is that there are some things that you can do to help you when you are using Google, because you know, Google's purpose is to basically organize the world's information and make it accessible for everyone. So that's an awful big gig for Google, and they're doing a pretty great job. But there are some tools that you can use when you're using Google to help narrow and improve the search results that you get. So on the screen, you'll see a couple of examples there. Quotes can be used when you only want to see those answers relevant to exactly what you're looking for, okay? You're not interested in other ones, you just want to search for a particular topic, you can use the quotes. And when you put an at the front, the @ symbol for social media, that's going to help you pull up social media accounts very easily. Or you can also put a $ in front of a number to see the prices as well if you're looking for something. To search hashtags, you need to put the hashtag symbol in front as well. And that is going to be something that you will find very useful, particularly for trending topics. I'd also think that it's a good idea to sign up for Google Trends as well. If you've not explored Google Trends, it can be really useful for staying across emerging stories that are yet to break. And that is something that will just, you know, provide you with some information that you otherwise may not have found as well. Now, when you're writing audio, as I like to call it, when we're creating reports or podcasts or programs, Valerie Geller, who is a friend and colleague of mine, she's an international author, and she is also an ex-presenter. She is a fantastic woman who's super engaging at storytelling. And she has this great quote that says, "There are no boring stories. There are only boring storytellers." And the secret to success, if you apply the Valerie Geller method, is to always tell the truth, make it matter, and never be boring. If you follow those 3 points, you can't go wrong. They're really great for all content. Tell the truth, make it matter, and never be boring. And having a clear idea of what you're trying to communicate allows you a greater chance of successfully sharing that message. That's the pretty much fundamental aspect of basic communication skills as well. So if you've got a clear image in your mind of what you're going to communicate, when you're writing audio, you're also writing for the ear. So it's different than when you're writing a story on paper or on screen, because you've really got to not just think about the words, you've got to think about your audience, and you've also got to think about the sounds that are going to enhance the content. So for myself, I'll often be thinking of a topic and I immediately think in audio, and I think of the sound effects that would be perfect to open that report with, or that could be enhanced, enhance the content as well. So top tips when you are writing audio though, always write in a conversational tone, because what happens is if you're reading off scripts, it can sound like you're reading. And when you're doing a report, you want to still sound like you're delivering the content in a conversational and authentic way. And that's how you really connect with your audience. Try and think about one thought per sentence and give it color. You want to be describing things very accurately so that the listener feels like they're right there with you in the moment at the center of the action as well. Let your personality shine through. And when you're starting out, always script your intros and your outros. If nothing else, if you're covering a live event somewhere, you'd still want to know how you're going to introduce that topic and get out of it at the end. It's fine to start to ad-lib and be present in the moment, describing what you can see. But what I often found when I was first starting to do reports was I was good at the intro, I was great at the middle, and I never knew how to get out of them sometimes. So I talked too long before moving on to the next point. Try and use an active voice, because that tells a person, it really kind of tells what a person or thing does, and a passive voice tells what is done or what is not as well. So there's some examples on your worksheet that will talk about a dog and Lady Gaga as well, if you're a fan, and give you some example of the context of how to avoid common cliches or structuring it in a way that doesn't connect. But try not to use over cliched words. It's really key. And the other thing that I can recommend is to really still be yourself. We want to hear you in your stories and your reports. You don't need to try to sound like someone else, although when you're first starting out, definitely look, find examples of people you admire who maybe are already in the media and listen to how they're structuring their stories or their reports. And maybe you can learn a little bit from them and then personalize it with your own touch. But it's important to practice to be confident, and ultimately it's about having your voice and becoming into your own voice as a storyteller and reporter as well. So there's a little bit of a reflective exercise here. I do want to flag that your life is actually content. Now, when I first started in media, I was 19 years old, and I didn't really understand what that was. I often tried to keep my work and life kind of separated, but working in media, you soon realize how blurred the lines are, because you you're kind of always on when you're in a media role, because even if you're not working, you might be walking to the shops and then you see or hear something newsworthy and you immediately start thinking of how that could be formed into a good report. So try to think about what's happening in your own lives and around you. It could be something going on with your friends or your family. It could be also happening, something at school or in your sporting community as well. Your life is your story. So think about some of the things that are happening in your life or with your friends' lives or family, and think about how that could possibly be turned into content. Now, I will just say, with your friends and family, if you're planning to use something that's a personal story or that's happening to them, please be respectful and ask permission. You don't want to turn your friend's life into content without them knowing about it, because that could kind of be an easy way to spoil a good friendship. So always ask permission if they're happy for you to use that in content as well. Now, the exciting part, writing an intro. So how do you actually write an intro? Well, we're going to look at intros, interviews, and outros, and also play you a little example of some pieces as well shortly. But when you're writing an intro, it's really important to write an intro with a question. Use an interesting statistic or find a common experience. You want to be setting the scene with words. You don't have to also tell things in a linear fashion. You don't have to say, thanks for joining me right now. I'm with this person who's an expert in this, and we're going to talk about that. It doesn't have to be so structured. It could be, have you ever wondered how the medicine gets in the medicine jars? Well, Bob here is a pharmacist and he's going to take us through. So you can start with an interesting fact or a statistic and maybe open with that. It could be, did you know that 1 in 4 people globally now own a smartphone? How close is your smartphone to you right now? Well, we're going to meet Ted, who built the smartphone. For example, you could be structuring things in a broad way. Always do start broad and find a point that's going to relate to your listener. Something like how to turn $50 into $500 is likely to resonate with most people. So find something that's going to actually connect with your audience again. And you don't have to be generic or boring, and you don't have to introduce yourself in the first line either. Often people can say, hi, I'm this person and I'm welcoming my guest to my show. You can start by introducing the interesting content first and then doing the formalities second. But definitely provide the opportunity at the beginning to set the content and the context. Then you can expand on your headline and the purpose and why we're here to hear about the interesting things we're going to hear about. And we've given you a bit of an example on how to structure. So it is definitely worthwhile having a play around with those. And the example that we've got is about pigs jumping off diving boards. Have you ever wondered how you could possibly make a pig jump off a diving board? That immediately is going to get most people's interest kind of sparked. And then you build on the interest. That's the challenge the trainers face each year when they're preparing the pigs for the diving show. And Brittany and Whitney are taking their famous, jumps. Tom Bellamy trains them, and he's going to be telling us all the interesting things about the racing pigs and divers that you can see at this year's show. So it's a way, rather than saying, hi, I'm with Tom who trains pigs. That's not as interesting as the way that we've given the example there. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of structure. I want to play another little piece for you.
ABC Radio Australia.
Now to the extraordinary story of the Tongan women's soccer team, forced out of their own country by disaster and the pandemic. With the OFC Nations Cup, the first stage of qualifying for the 2023 World Cup on the horizon, the squad decamped to Australia so they could train and play their first matches in 3 years. But as Talia Olatia reports, if they thought their troubles were over once they touched down on Australian soil, then I'm afraid they were wrong.
January 15th this year is a date etched on the memories of every Tongan. It was the day the country was devastated by a volcanic eruption and tsunami. The head of women's football in Tonga, Adelaide Tuivai-Lala, says the women in the national squad had a training session that afternoon, followed by a practice match.
When the volcanic eruption and tsunami happened, just the referee blew the final whistle. That's when the first things came out from Hunga Tonga and Hunga Hapai, and no one knows what's really going on. All the members of the squads from Vava'u, Hapai, and in Tongatapu, they were all camped at the Tonga Football Academy.
Not only could many of the players not get home, but the disaster was followed days later by a COVID lockdown, and sport in Tonga shut down. Former Australian international player Connie Selby arrived in the country on the day the lockdown was declared to take up the role of national coach. So as she could do nothing with the players in country, she used her connections to organise a camp in Australia where Tonga would play friendly games against the visiting Philippines team under former Matildas coach Alan State.
That's a great example of a very well-researched and structured report because it had to cover a lot of facts and also set the context about the situation as well. So I hope that you enjoyed that piece, and all of the links that we're listening to this morning, you can listen in full if you would like to hear them again or refer back to them at any stage over the next 20 days as well. Now, one of the things that you will do also when you're creating your reports is you'll probably do a fair bit of interviewing, whether it's family, friends, or interesting people in your community. So it's worth us touching on some interviewing skills and techniques so that you know how to do it as well. So the goal of an interview is often to inform or to entertain, to tell a story, be thought-provoking, or to react to an event, or sometimes even to hold someone to account for their opinions or their actions. It can also be a combination of these. So, you could be asking a politician, holding them to account of something, and then through that interview, something funny happens and then it ends up being entertaining as well. But there are three main types of interviews. One is information. So where we're searching for facts or discovering information about a situation or event. Another one is the discovery interview, which it asks the talent to reveal something about themselves. That's often a very popular one for television talk shows when they're interviewing high-profile people and they reveal their hobbies and interests or something about their childhood. There's also accountability. So that's often when you're trying to interview a decision maker, a person in a position of power, perhaps a politician, a leader, or a representative of an organization where you're holding them to account and you're also asking them questions which require you to think about planning and preparing your scripts in advance. Now, a little bit about interviewing. Sometimes you can prepare so much and be so focused on making sure you get through all of your preparation that you can stop being in the moment and really miss some golden content opportunities. So there's that fine balance of you definitely want to prepare and research before interviewing someone, but you also want to make sure that when you are actually interviewing someone, that you try your very best to be really present with them and make them feel like they are the only person in the room. And the reason for that is when I've seen it happen many times in my media career, when people have done so much research and they're so focused on asking the questions they've prepared, they miss moments of interacting with their guest where their guest has revealed something that would have actually been better than their questions anyway if they just responded naturally. So it's really important to be present. I can think of a few examples of people missing really key moments because they were just thinking about the next question they were going to ask. One thing too, when you're interviewing, let your talent shine. Even though you're the media person or you're the aspiring reporter here, often the best reports and the best interviews are done by people who know how to make their guest feel really safe and really comfortable to open up. And then that's where the gold happens, okay? Talking over the top of your guest or talking too much, cutting them off, that's not our role, okay? When you're really, really good at interviewing, you often don't speak that much, ironically. You kind of introduce them and introduce the topic, and then you actually let the guest have all the time to share. So that's something that's really key. A free tip for you though, don't ever hand over your microphone, including your phone, to someone else. The moment that you do that, you lose control of the interview, because guess what? If you have a guest who loves to have a big yarn, you are going to have an issue trying to wrap them up because they've now got the microphone. So if you, let's pretend my pen's my microphone. If I was interviewing someone, I'd be holding the mic, and then I would be asking the questions, putting it over near them and bringing it back to me, because if they keep yabbing on a bit, we can always say, thank you so much. It's been wonderful chatting with you, and cut them off, politely and appropriately as well. Knowing when to jump in an interview can sometimes take a while to learn as well. It's a bit like skipping. If anyone's ever skipped, particularly with large skipping ropes, which you often can do at school when you're younger, and you've got to kind of sense when it's okay to kind of jump in. It's that kind of skill as well. You need to tune into the energy in the room and the guest, and just don't second guess yourself. Jump in and keep the conversation going, because otherwise sometimes the talent can run away in a different direction than you want the interview to go as well. So some first steps, always think about, why are you doing this interview? What do we want to know about this topic or this guest? Can they speak in pictures as well? There are some really amazing human beings on this planet who've got incredible stories, but not everybody is a good storyteller. But some people can learn to be better storytellers, and then there are those that are just naturally fascinating people. I'm sure you all know someone, or your family member, someone in your community or at school, maybe it's one of your teachers, that just naturally is really engaging and has that, that bit of something where it doesn't matter what they're talking about, you're a little bit more interested because they're talking. So they make great talent. And when you are interviewing people who are great talent, it will be a far more successful process than sometimes if people are just too shy and get a lack of confidence. It can impact the quality of the interview as well. Don't get discouraged if people say no to you as well. If you're asking people to be interviewed, it's a numbers game. Don't take it personally, and don't be disheartened, because there will be people who will say yes. And if someone declines, always be polite, thank them for considering, and move on to the next person as well. We've given you in the resource as well some examples of how you might contact someone in an interview situation, via email or also when you're calling them on the phone. And there's also a way that you can politely let them know that you've had to decide to move on to someone else if you haven't heard back from them in an appropriate length of time as well. I would love to play another example here.
I'm going to check in with my good mate Dustin Curry, a local bachelor man, who was the guiding voice behind a beautiful sculpture erected in Damon Park earlier this month. Here's our yarn.
Hey, Gallangor Dali, Mecca.
I'm sorry I got you up off your mundi for this one.
Oh, brother, anytime. I've got to get up and move around a bit more often on my dinners.
Well, I know you just had your Jengar full. It's tucker time there at Camp, eh?
Yeah, mate, yeah, it's not too bad here, working out in the curry here on Mitakooda country. It's always a pleasure to get back to that ocean breeze on Botula country.
Absolutely. How's the grub there at work?
Absolutely outstanding. Unfortunately, there are no witchetty grubs, as you white fellas like to call them, but maybe they'll come in season soon, with a bit of rain.
But the cook's doing all right there at the moment, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, man. They do a very substantial job here, and there's always opportunities for keen young people think they're going to get into the mines and go and drive trucks and things. But like everything else, man, you got to work your way up. So that means starting in the kitchen.
So, Dusty, yeah, I wanted to talk about the Scar Tree. We were there the other day. It was just such a beautiful day.
Wait, come on. Look, Mackie, you're not going to keep calling it a scar, are you?
Okay, the Kundu.
Well, these are different elements, but like to tell you, brother, is that what's left behind is a scar, of course. But that scar is a form of trauma. And that trauma is just like those that present themselves on our bodies. But the delicate and deliberate way in which the bark that left the scar was removed from the tree, that's the most important bit, man, because that's the visual representation we see our ancestors having been there before us. I want you to think about this. If there is a place in your world, it might be an old house or it could be one that your parents still live in, where you tie back to a memory of something happening ceremoniously, a ritual, a cooking of a dinner or a favoured dish or something that happened in that space. For me, as Butala Bilam, the Butala people, when I go to these culturally modified trees and I stand in the footstep of that tree, it's telling me that I'm back here and I'm on country. And I can say without doubt that I'm standing in the footstep of my ancestor.
So that beautiful piece is goes for a lot longer, but that section really demonstrates some of the things that we were talking about the importance of letting your talent shine. And Dustin has a beautiful way of telling a story, and his pace and the tonality in his voice, he really draws you in with the descriptive language and inclusive language that he's using, that the interviewer, Christian, didn't really need to be saying much after they had that initial banter to then get into learning more about that, special tree and its importance from a cultural and ancestral angle as well. So there are some kind of top 10 tips that we've got to help you when you are interviewing. Definitely do your research so that you know about your interviewee. One of the worst things you can do is rock up to an interview and say, so tell me what you do, or so tell me about your book that I haven't read, or your album I haven't listened to yet, okay? Also, write down your questions that you want to remember the important things. Some of you might use dot points. I know that you'll probably prep a lot on your phones, but it sometimes can be handy to have a good old-fashioned notebook with you, just because it can sometimes be easy to read a larger font when you are in that moment. Listen to the answers and follow-up questions when they say, ask follow-up questions when they say something interesting. It's about being able to respond, and also try not to read the questions like a script. You definitely want to be actively listening, as we've touched on earlier, and ask open questions. Sometimes when you say things like, what do you do, or will, or I, or have, they can prompt kind of one-word answers, and that's not really good for an interview. You want to kind of start your questions with a what, or how, or why. They will give you far better answers as well. And ask questions that encourage people to tell stories, such as, can you tell me about the time you did this? Or what happened when you started working there? Or how did it feel when you got dropped from the team? Ask them questions that provoke a response as well, and ask one question at a time, because often when people are being interviewed, they can be a bit nervous and they're really trying to focus on what you're saying. So try not to ask multiple questions at once. I'm very guilty of doing that sometimes. Just get excited and I ask 2 questions at the same time. So you want to just ask one question at once. And try not to interrupt, because you can actually, if you're pre-recording, you can always edit it later as well. So if someone does waffle on a bit and you're a bit bored with what they're saying, don't worry, because in the edit, you can cut that bit out, okay? Always stay in control of your interview, because like I said before, you don't want to hand over your microphone or phone and lose control of the interview, because you won't be able to wrap them up. Now, when we're recording audio, it's really fun. It's so portable. It's exciting. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's a creative activity as well. And thanks to today's pretty affordable technology, most mobile phones actually have pretty decent mics and recording capabilities thanks to the internal microphones. You can, for those of you that discover that you too, like me, love audio, you can consider further down the track after this exercise of maybe investing in a USB microphone. They are pretty much available. They're quite reasonably priced, and they plug straight into a laptop as well. And they can produce a studio quality sound at home. Or you can also get these days little adapters for your mobile phone to improve the quality even further as well. But ultimately, the first thing you need to do when you are recording audio is think about where you're recording, okay? Test out your location first and always monitor with headphones. You definitely need to have some headphones. I prefer old school ones that go over the head. I just, probably because I'm older. But you can use, your ones that come with your phone as well. I don't have mine handy, but you do want to listen to when you're recording always through headphones. If you don't use headphones, you won't pick up basically the sound quality. So you definitely want to always listen with headphones. Headphones are actually the number one item you need before your microphone. Headphones first, mic second. Control as much as possible in your environment. So when you are in your environment, I don't know about you, but even at your place, there could be people coming and going, family members, friends dropping by that could interrupt your recording. So have a think about when the best time might be to be recording. Some people like to record late at night because there's less noise going on around them. You've got to think about, is there a fridge nearby? Can you hear doors closing? Is there traffic noise or the wind coming in or insects at night? Oceans or beaches can create beautiful noise, but if you're recording outside, take into consideration what's happening. You wouldn't stand right next to the waves and interview someone, for example, but you might record some waves to put in the background and record them in the car park talking to you. Also record in a quiet place if possible. Minimal background noise is best, and it will produce the most richest and clear sound. If you are recording outside, be aware of wind. You can't fix it in post-production or in editing, okay? You need to get clear, rich quality audio the first time rather than trying to improve bad quality audio in editing. Try not to hold your phone if possible, because it's really easy to bump it or knock it, and it'll be picked up in your headphones as well. So definitely even just put it on a table that you can have close by. If you're sitting at a table, just put it kind of down in front of you. And when you are recording, and you can play around with your phones later to test what it looks like from a visual perspective of that sound wave, when it's too loud or too soft when you're listening with your headphones. And you probably want to, if I was recording, I probably would position the microphone in my phone about here. If I was too close, it'll just distort. And if I'm too far away, it won't pick up my voice, okay? So watch your audio levels, and also think about what kind of sounds are around you, or what kind of sounds will enhance the content that you're talking about. So if you are doing a report about a band, that plays music, do you want to record the instruments warming up? Or do you want to record a bit of their song, or have some kind of instruments maybe tuning as well? Think about the audio that can be used to enhance your content, and also record a little bit more of the interesting sounds around you than you'll need. It's a good idea to get in the habit of recording 1 minute of what we call atmosphere. So that would be like if you went home, or for those of you that are at home right now, if you just recorded, for example, you're cooking dinner and you're just going to pop it on and record in the background, and the sound of you moving things and moving around. If you were doing a report on things to make for dinner for under $10, then you might have some sound effects of that environment. But it's a good idea wherever you're recording, always record some atmosphere, because it can be useful in the editing process as well. And if you make a mistake, it's totally fine to keep recording, or even ask your guest to kind of redo whatever word they mispronounced or pick it up. You can just say, hi, could we just try that again? I think we bumped the mic there, or I didn't quite catch that. And that's totally, industry practice. It happens all the time. And when you're file formatting, the highest quality is a WAV file, not an MP3. The audio quality is a bit lower with MP3s, but look, for this, it won't matter too much. But if you are after a really broadcast quality message, it definitely is best to record as a WAV file first at it's 48 by 24 bit is what you're after there as well. Now, I know that we are running out of time, so I definitely don't want to finish up without telling you how to make your own voiceover booth with what you already have at home. Super easy. We do it all the time. And thanks to COVID, everyone did this. Radio shows and radio commercials around the world were made with blankets over the last few years, with making a little recording booth. You can easily do this by putting a blanket or a doona over your head and using your phone to read your script when you're recording as well. You can also, if you've got a wardrobe with a lot of fluffy coats or jackets, you can speak into it and record, and the sound quality will be higher. I know it sounds quite odd what I'm telling you right now, but these techniques will actually improve the audio quality. What you don't want for recording is concrete floors and lots of wide open spaces where sound waves can just bounce off things. If you do find that the sound's bouncing, try and speak into some soft furnishings. It can sometimes just mean getting a box, sticking some blankets in it, a cardboard box, and putting a bit of foam or something. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube that you can do there as well. And I highly recommend having a play around with recording in your cupboard and under doonas, because you will be able to hear how much it improves as well. So I'm just going to get us a little bit ahead with when you are recording on your phone. One of the things to do is definitely have a look at your little voice recorder that I think we talked about earlier. So on your phone, a lot of you will probably be using your phones for this exercise. Some of you may have access to mics, but don't worry if you don't, because as I said, the internal mics in phones are great. You open up Voice Recorder and you select Interview, and then you push the red button when you're recording. And when you're editing, there's a lot of ways you can edit. Your phone will also have a built-in editor, which you may or may not realize. You can slide to use the blue markers to select where you want to cut. Or you can also access a free program called Audacity online as well, which lets you multi-layer and mix as well, or something, you might have paid subscription with another program called Adobe Audition as well, which I'd recommend. There's also lots more resources to refer to in your workbook as well. Tips on sound effects, where to publish if you want to share it with the world, how to upload and share it on publishing platforms. And I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you. I know that it's been a big day for you all, and I really appreciate your attention and participation this afternoon. It's been wonderful to connect with you. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear some of your reports.
Thanks so much, Fiona. That was wonderful. And gosh, I wish I'd been part of a session like this years ago. You've really provided us with so many really practical tips in terms of being reporters. You've taken us through the fundamentals, which of course is fundamental, and touched on the role, the audience, research, writing, interviewing and recording. A jam-packed session, really practical, really useful. And I hope that our participants out there are really fired up about conducting an audio interview and recording. And just to finish off, you really did tell the truth. You made it matter, and you certainly weren't boring. So
thank you. Apologies for the coughing without my mic being on mute, and a couple of text messages coming through and the screen sharing. But yeah, I'm very passionate about audio, and one of the best things that's been so exciting is to see how technology has advanced to make recording audio possible for everyone. And that I really encourage you to play around with your voice recorder on your phone, take it places, record people, make sure that if you are recording anyone, it is illegal to record people without their permission. So don't start, recording your family without them knowing, because it's uncool and not best practice. But play around with what you can make, and you can make some really interesting soundscapes just around your own lives on your way to school and stuff. So I hope you enjoy the task and the activities, and look forward to the results in 20 days' time. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah, good luck, everybody, and keep an eye on the PASS website for details around that project. And we'll be coming back together in some form on the 16th of June just to see what you've created and celebrate and showcase those student reports. So thanks so much, Fiona and Sue, today for joining us. Thanks to all the participants out there in PNG and Australia. And great to have your time this afternoon. We look forward to the next session.